Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hi, I'm Supervisor Paula Mahan, and welcome to Colonie Connect. Today we have two special guests, Nancy Heinzen, who is with the Coalition on Stormwater, and also Jack Cunningham, who is our Commissioner of Public Works. Welcome.
Thanks, Paula.
Did I get your title correctly, or do you have another title?
Stormwater Program Coordinator of the Stormwater Coalition of Albany County.
Okay, I'm glad
Yeah.
you said that. I wouldn't remember all of
I know
that.
it's quite a mouthful. So,
Well, stormwater is it's quite an issue, and for municipalities, it's the new mandates that have come down through the years have really changed the way development is in our municipalities at this time. And I know that the town of Colonie is very progressive in the area of stormwater management. And I know, Nancy, part of that is our involvement and the advice we get from the coalition. And I know when I first came on board, that was one of the things that the administration from DPW had talked to me about, the importance of stormwater itself, but also the advantages of belonging to the coalition. So I thought maybe we could start off with a little bit of background on what the coalition is, what your role is as coordinator. And obviously, we have members of our Public Works Department that work under the direction of Jack in the area of stormwater. And so we go back and forth on a lot of issues that come up, as well as our representative. We have a representative on your coalition as well. We're part of that coalition. So maybe you can give us a little background on what the coalition is, its purpose, when it was formed, and some examples. I'm sure we're not the only members. Who else is a member?
okay, yeah. The coalition was formed actually in 2008. Our first meeting with the Board of Directors was in 2008, and what preceded it was a set of grants that a group of municipalities had jointly applied for through New York State DEC. Those were 11 municipalities and Albany County, and the total grant amount was $358,000. And the grant deliverables included developing educational materials, training municipal staff in how to do construction inspections, which is part of the mandate, is managing construction sites for stormwater, doing outfall mapping. And we ended up basically meeting regularly every month. And because it was a 50-50% match on the grant, the municipalities were all obligated to put in their fair share, which is largely labor. The second grant involved creating a long-term funding base to keep the municipalities cooperating together, addressing stormwater, which involved the creation of an intermunicipal agreement, which through that intermunicipal agreement we created a board of directors, working group, and membership fee amounts for each member of the existing group that was collaborating on the grants to then form the Stormwater Coalition. And so once we became a membership group, then we really kind of solidified our work as a coalition. And the primary purpose is really to collaborate on the implementation of shared permit requirements. Mm-hmm. And also, there's a lot of informal communication that occurs between all the coalition members because we're all trying to do something new. We learn a lot from each other and also act as the point for changes by the EPA and DEC. It's a very quick way of communicating those changes so that we are all on the same page as we go forward with implementation.
Okay. And we are one of the, I assume we're one of the larger municipalities that participate. And how many participate as a whole?
There are 11 towns, villages, and cities, and they're all from the urbanized areas of Albany County. Albany County is the non-municipality, and then recently SUNY Albany became a member of the coalition. Okay. The criteria is that we all share an obligation to be in compliance with the stormwater regulations, and that permit defines who needs to be regulated and who isn't. And that's fairly arcane information, but I could go into that if you're interested.
Okay. Well, I think, we as a municipality understand the importance of belonging to the coalition. It's certainly helpful for us. And we've tried to be, good participants and do the best we can as far as managing stormwater. I think one of the things is, for years, stormwater was not a major issue that people would talk about or municipalities would address so seriously, and that has changed because we understand the negative impacts of stormwater runoff if it's not managed properly. So maybe for our audience, you could maybe explain what stormwater runoff is and why it is a problem that needs to be managed.
Yeah, stormwater, take the word stormwater and particularly the word storm. So when you think of stormwater, think of rain events. And basically, rain falls and it hits the earth, and because of gravity, it goes downstream. And as it hits the earth, depending on the type of surface if it's vegetation or pavement or roof area, it's going to pick up certain kinds of pollutants. So if you're walking on a street on a rainy day, just look around and you can start to identify the kinds of stormwater pollutants. Some examples would be pet waste. Look at a lawn that's got a lot of dog waste on it. Imagine what happens when it rains. The bacteria from the pet waste eventually goes down drainage to a stream. Similarly, if someone's just fertilized their lawn, maybe excessively, those fertilizers get picked up by the rain as well and also goes downstream. There's a whole range of pollutants. Oil droppings from cars, pet waste, goose waste. Construction is huge. When you think of an open construction site, usually you'll see a lot of dirt all over the construction site. Imagine what happens, it rains, that dirt gets kicked up, and eventually it goes down drainage as well. So the purpose is to remove those pollutants, and because they're so variable and the cause of them varies from person to person, construction site to construction site, solving the problem is really a mixture of strategies, both from education, severe requirements for the management of sites during construction and post-construction, for municipalities to pay attention to their own operations, to make sure they're looking at each facility and targeting possible sources of pollutants, and then working out a methodical plan for getting rid of the pollutants.
And this is part of the education process. You and the coalition and our members that participate educate our staff so that we understand it. And it is a topic that it's important to get out there so that the public understands why we need to do what we're doing, and also developers that come into town and want to move forward with their project, why it's important to have the stormwater managed. It's not usually a discussion that takes place around the dinner table, but it is very important for people to understand what stormwater is all about and why these mandates came about. Now, we have the obligation of managing and making sure that developers are meeting the requirements and the mandates so that we can protect the water. And also within town, we have a lot of, this is a big town, it's a huge town.
Yeah.
We have a lot of work ourselves that we need to do, outfalls.
Outfalls, yeah.
And so
This
how many
is-
do we have?
Well, we're still counting them.
Still counting? Okay.
One of the requirements under the stormwater regulations is that the town manages all the outfalls of where stormwater actually comes out of the ground and goes into streams or rivers or wherever. Right now, we estimate we've got about 1,700 of those.
Wow.
And the town is obligated to inspect 20% of those each year and make sure that they're functioning appropriately. And we also check them for pollutants coming downstream, and if we find pollutants, we track them back to their source. So every year, every 5 years, our plan is that every 5 years we will have inspected the entire system and made any corrections in that system and improved it.
Okay.
So that's the program right now. We've got a department of 3 individuals that work on that, and we keep them very busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, 20% a year, that's a good percentage.
Right.
and obviously 5 years, that adds up to 100%.
That's
So
right.
that's what we need to be doing. Again, this takes time from our staff that deals directly with stormwater. We also have within our 5-year paving plan, which we talked about a few weeks ago, there's a drainage component, and this is part of that,
Correct.
as well as checking,
Yep.
as many drainage systems as we can each year.
Right.
Sometimes we just get calls and residents will alert us to something, but we really wanted to have a solid plan in place where we actually had set the goal and how we were going to meet that each year. So that is well in progress.
And we're very aggressive this year. We've been out, I don't have the number yet, but I know we've gone out and corrected quite a few issues in our stormwater system, and we continue to find those from as minor as just fixing a catch basin that's no longer functioning correctly to one area where we discovered a whole slope had just eroded away, and our system was completely exposed above ground, and we had to go back and rebuild it. So,
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and it's a lot of work to maintain it.
It is, especially in a town this size. Of
Correct.
course, it's relevant. We have more staff because we're a large town, but smaller municipalities face the same difficulties with getting everything managed, as well as costs and those types of things. But certainly we can understand why it's important to do. So part of the way we regulate stormwater management is we have members of our Public Works Department that are devoted to that. Also, on the construction sites, developers usually have an engineer on site that will inspect the stormwater facilities as they go through, maybe weekly or every couple of weeks, and then as they see things need to be improved or whatever, they will do that. And then our staff, when they get to the construction sites as well, they can conference with the engineers and get a good idea if things going well, do we need to make some changes. So that's part of how we regulate. And again, the other part of it is taking care of our town property through the plan that we've put in place with the paving and drainage plan. So we know how we're trying to manage the problem, and a lot of direction came from the collaborative efforts of the coalition, because you have people from many different areas sharing information, which is a great way to go.
Yeah, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah. Because this is a regulation which originates from Environmental Protection Agency, and it's administered by New York State DEC, it's technically called a Speedy's permit. And Speedy's permits lay out very clearly what the obligations are of that permit, one of which is an annual report which is submitted to DEC by June 1st. And that annual report basically sets it up so you need to describe what you're doing annually to DEC, and this is something that the coalition does collaboratively. So we assemble all the data from all the coalition members, for example, how many outfalls have been mapped, how many construction sites have been inspected, how many construction SWIPs have been reviewed, what kind of educational programs you've done. So because of that, you have an ongoing monitoring of what you have done to date, and also you need to state what you plan on doing in the future. So the coalition both assembles the data, we provide sort of instructions and guidance as to what some of the priorities should be in the future, and increasingly we're doing more collaborative planning, because if you think about stormwater, it basically runs down drainage and often will go from one municipality to another. I mean, that's more typical, and it's framed up in what's called a watershed, and that just describes the whole drainage area of the water from the highest elevation down to the lowest point. So through the coalition, there are, for example, some watersheds in the town of Colonie, the Chroma Kill, for example. It's partially in the town of Colonie and partially in the village of Manans. Those are both members of the coalition, so right at the outset, we have a way of talking through issues on a shared watershed, because we meet with each other. We have an understanding of the infrastructure that we share. We're now identifying the problems because we're all doing that same outfall mapping. and identifying what kind of pollutants are at the outfalls. And so we now have a big picture look at what's going on in a whole watershed, or in some cases a smaller drainage area. But that's really a function of the group meeting together for now close to 5 years. We have a strong working familiarity, and we now have a very strong GIS database of all of the outfalls, which is shared collaboratively among all the members.
Well, I know over the past few years anyway, we've received a good report card from DEC, and part of that is, as you say, the collaborative effort to making sure the annual reports are done, and they're done correctly and effectively, so that we make sure that what we're doing is documented, and again, as you say, what are the goals for the future. So it's ongoing, and that's the nice part, I think, of the coalition. Each municipality, they're not out there on their own. You have people to collaborate with and share information with, and if you have a question, you've got other people to go to. So I think that's one of the major benefits of belonging to the coalition. One of the things that we look at, whenever new mandates come down, I know you stated earlier that for the coalition you work through grants, and that's a question that we get asked often. Okay, we have new mandates. Is there funding from the federal government? Is there funding from the state government? Is there funding, local government? And sometimes there's not a lot of funding, and you have to figure out, okay, I have to meet this goal. How do I do it? And I know, being in education for many years, we were often faced with those types of things. New mandates would come down, and again, the process you're using of through collaboration, we all got together to figure out, okay, this is our goal. How do we get there? And a lot of times you have to come up with a method that's effective, but also efficient and meets the resources. You can work with the resources that you have. So primarily, is there any type of funding other than tax dollars and grant money?
Yeah, there is funding. New York State DEC typically has created a pool of money for stormwater management. It's through the Environmental Protection Fund. The first two grants that I referenced earlier, prior to the formation of the coalition, that was our source of money. The coalition actually applied for another grant last fall. I think it was about $120,000. The focus of that would be to help municipalities develop model laws for implementing green infrastructure, which is now embedded in the stormwater design manual. Green infrastructure is a bigger subject. We could talk more about that, but that's a grant that we applied for. We haven't heard about it yet. The reality, though, is that it is definitely shrinking funds. Much of the burden still resides with the taxpayers in terms of money going into the general funds of each municipality. It's kind of daunting, frankly. It's a reality that all the municipalities are facing, and certainly the ones with the largest number of outfalls, the largest amount of construction activity. They're the ones who are under the pressure the most to simultaneously meet the permit requirements, continue existing municipal operations, and be strategic enough so that scarce resources are used effectively. That one thing that has happened is, because we have a group that meets regularly, we talk regularly, is that we've been very lucky to have key staff people from the full coalition at each municipal level. They're really capable. They really know what they're doing, and we tend to share a lot as someone moves forward a little bit, let's say on how to do outfall mapping or the survey work. They then come back to the group as a whole and say, listen, this is the smart way of doing it. We can knock off 30 outfalls if you're efficient, you use 2 people. So a lot of those sort of simple management realities become shared widely, and we try to get the job done as quickly and as efficiently as we can, and use the sort of experience of others to help guide that process. So does it work? Usually. Will it solve the big issues of funding this and implementing everything long term? Who knows?
Well, I think, the responsibilities of, as a municipality, sometimes they shift as time goes on. Certain things become more of a priority than others. If you're lucky, you may have some things that are pretty well underway, and you can devote those resources to other areas. And I know Jack and the whole staff with DPW, we try very hard to look at the resources we have from within, and how can we all help each other to get the job done. And certainly, I think our staff has done a great job with that. But it's not an easy task. There's no question about it. And it's also it's been an education for the residents, for the developers that are coming into town. There are new things that they need to do, so they are getting educated along the way. And at this point, we talk to a lot of developers, and they can pretty much tell you what they need to do, what our expectations are, and they want to do the right thing. They want to work with us and do the right thing. So I think we've come a long way there. Anytime there's a change, it's not easy.
I think awareness is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have with all this, because as you create awareness with developers and with the residents, it also creates a change in pattern of behavior, and that's always something that's difficult to overcome when somebody does something the same way over and over and over again, and suddenly they find that they need to change their behavior. It's always a challenge. One of the examples I can give you is that right now we're working with our solid waste group up at the landfill to develop a program to take in unused prescription drugs.
Right.
Previously, we've always told everybody just dump them down the toilet and they're gone. But now I won't even say suddenly, but now we're looking at it and saying that gets into our water supply. This is something we need to manage better and keep that out of our water supply. So we're creating a program, and that's going to be a whole behavioral change for residents, is to teach them that there's a different way of disposing of them. So a lot of that is a big challenge for us.
Yeah, in some ways, I think the younger children, as they grow up with some of these things, and they learn in their science class or whatever that this is what we do to recycle, this is what we do with stormwater. It becomes a part of the curriculum they learn growing up, and it's much easier for them to adapt because they don't have some of the behaviors that we've used and learned as we've grown up. But obviously, most people don't stop and think about that. If
Nancy's even got me washing my car on my front lawn instead of in the driveway, so I don't get as much runoff.
I know two people who are doing that now. No, actually, I think that's very true. We do education with children. We've done some programs at Blue Creek Elementary School and also with the City of Albany at Normanskill Farm, the Normanskill. And it's interesting observing their awareness. Well, one, we're teaching them more about watersheds and stormwater pollution, but they come at it with a certain knowledge already. We also see that move up through the generations. The college students now who come out with an environmental degree are very ready to go with this whole concept of stormwater management. The technology piece in terms of geographic information systems is just an incredible tool to really understand very local land features and how you can manage it more effectively. That said, my compliments go to the town of Colonie and their visionary GIS program, because similarly with Bethlehem, that has made the management of the stormwater program, analysis and construction sites, just a lot easier. It's quicker. It was a very smart investment whenever it happened.
It was there when we got there, and it actually, it is quite an asset, and it does help us in a lot of different ways. So we're happy we're happy we can have that for our use. The education portion, obviously, I think it's great that you're starting at the elementary level. I know Blue Creek School well. It's in the North Colonie district where I'm from. And, the kids really, I taught at the junior high level, they love all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, this is because it's concrete. They can go out and observe it in a natural setting. And it makes sense if you have bad things going into your water systems, that can't be good, for us. And so the kids really enjoy it, and I'm glad to hear that it's at that level already, and we're trying to do our part as far as education as well. Now, our inspectors, people that get into actually implementing the management plans in a municipality, what type of training do they need, or is there a type of certification? Maybe you can explain to our audience, how they become proficient in managing stormwater.
Yeah, when this regulation went into effect, which was 2003, it was interesting to me the range of people who got involved with the regulation at the outset. Some of them came from the building departments. Some had a strong background in environmental studies or geography. At this point, to go to a construction site and understand how it's functioning and how you might analyze it to make sure the sediment is being managed properly and the long-term stormwater practices such as ponds and sand filters are operating correctly, I think there is certification you can get called CPESC, which is actually an international program, Certified Professional in Erosion and Sediment Control. People who get CPESC certification can come up through the municipalities, just working in building departments. Others tend to have a background in engineering, landscape architecture as well.
Okay.
And what's happening is the inspection piece is tiered out. Either you're an engineer by training and you work under an engineer, or you are a municipal inspector, and that it tends to be people who have a background in code inspection or an interest in natural resource management.
Okay.
I guess my point is that it's really all over the map at this point because it's a new field. There is certification out there, but what I'm finding is anybody who gets interested in the subject, they care about water resources, and they like to get out in the field and do work, and they're willing to put some time in to study up on it, can eventually get a lot of the certification in.
So it crosses quite a few different disciplines, whether it's engineering or inspectors, code enforcers,
and
environmental people.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned the interdisciplinary piece to it, because what's happening now, the field of stormwater management is interdisciplinary. So the most effective engineering firms tend to have someone with expertise in landscape architecture, engineering, municipal infrastructure, CAD, GIS, and those are the teams that are putting together the most innovative, low-impact development, better site design projects. So potentially down the road, you'll see more of these collaborations just at the design level, because you're now using natural vegetation to manage stormwater. You're trying to integrate infiltration treatments such as porous pavement. It's new to a lot of people, so you're drawing from a lot of different individuals with different expertise to make it all happen.
Okay, very good. Well, I guess, we know that we have to have trained staff in our municipal government as part of our either Department of Public Works, or we have we have it all. We have building departments, engineers, we have a very large public works staff. And you mentioned something about residents. The average homeowner, just by washing their car on the grass, that might be one way of helping out. But what are a couple other suggestions in our last few minutes that homeowners might be able to help us with?
The first thing to do as a homeowner is look at your property when it's raining and analyze carefully how is water coming off the roof, going down the gutters into a downspout, and where is it going?
Excuse me.
If it's draining to a low spot, you might have a chance to put in a small rain garden, which is a way of holding back the stormwater and letting it infiltrate through the ground and remove pollutants from the roof. You might be able to put in a rain barrel. Sometimes if you have a chance to repave your driveway, pitch it so it pitches down to the turf area, the grassy area, as opposed to down the driveway into the road. That's a way of helping it go directly to the green area and allows for infiltration. Simple things, if you own a pet, pick it up, put it in the garbage.
Makes sense.
Definitely wash your car, strange though it may sound, on grass, because usually that soapy water will go down your driveway into the road and then eventually to a stream. And that I've started to actually witness that more and more, people washing their cars in grassy areas. It's different, there's some resistance, but it definitely helps. Definitely with fertilizing your lawn, read the directions. Very often people never read the directions, so they end up putting a lot of lawn fertilizer on it when it isn't necessary. So it's to be more aware of your own property, what you're doing, and your own behaviors. And they're simple tasks, but they can make a big difference.
Great. Okay, great. Well, we certainly have covered a lot of information in a short period of time, and my allergies are starting to kick in here. So, but I do want to thank you, Nancy, for being with us today, and Jack. This is a very important topic, and I'm sure we'll have opportunity to talk a little bit more about it as we move into the future. But I assure you, we are trying to do our very best, and I would think that we are, good members of the coalition. You're very helpful to us as well. And as we move through the future with our plans, we certainly want to do our part to make, stormwater management a priority. We have, and we will continue to do that. So thank you very much for being here today. We really appreciate it. Your knowledge and your expertise is very valuable. So thank you. And thank you for tuning in to Colonie Connect.